Ethan Cole pressed two fingers against a burlap sack baking in the August sun and felt something move back. Not wind, not animal. A heartbeat. Faint as a dying candle, but real. His 7-year-old daughter Lily was already on her knees in the dirt beside it, her small hand flat against the rough cloth, her voice barely a breath. "Papa, she's still alive." Someone had tied a girl inside that sack and left her to die on the side of the road. And whoever had done it had been very, very sure no one would come looking. They were wrong. If this story moves you, please subscribe to the channel and follow along until the very end. And drop a comment below. Tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The road into Caldera Flats ran straight as a conviction and twice as unforgiving. Ethan Cole drove his wagon at the pace of a man who had nowhere urgent to be and too many reasons not to rush. Steady, deliberate, and tired in a way sleep had long since stopped fixing. Lily sat beside him on the bench with her bare feet dangling over the edge, yellow dress already dusty from the morning air. She was humming something. He didn't know what. He hadn't asked. He hadn't asked much of anything lately. 3 years since Clara died, and he had become a man of fewer words, harder hands, and a ranch that ran like a clock. Because if it stopped, he'd have nothing left to wind. "Papa?" "Papa, stop the wagon." He kept his eyes on the road. "We got supplies to fetch, Lily. Can't be dallying." "Papa." Her voice shifted. Not the voice she used when she wanted something, but the one she used when she'd found a bird with a broken wing, or a calf wedged under a fence rail. Small and certain and urgent in that quiet way that made grown men listen whether they intended to or not. "Stop the wagon. Now." He pulled back on the reins. Lily was climbing down before the wheels stopped turning. "Lily!" She was already running, toward the brush on the south side of the road, toward something he hadn't noticed, half hidden under the scrub oak and dried grass, sitting in the flat shadow of an old fence post that marked the edge of Henderson's land. A burlap sack, large enough to hold a man, tied rough at the top. Still. Ethan was off the wagon and beside her in 4 strides. He caught her arm before she touched it. "Let me," he said. He crouched down. He looked at the sack. He stayed very still for 2 full seconds, because he was listening. And what he heard stopped the breath in his chest entirely. A sound, faint, ragged, but unmistakable. Breathing. Someone was breathing inside that sack. "Papa," Lily said quietly behind him. "She's breathing." He didn't ask how she knew it was a she. He pulled his knife from his belt, cut the rope at the top, and the burlap fell open. He'd ridden in 2 range wars. He'd seen men shot, men burned, men left for the buzzards. But nothing in those years had prepared him for what that sack held. A girl. Young, 17, maybe 18. Dark hair matted against her face, wrists bound with rope that had cut into the skin. Breathing in shallow, uneven pulls, her chest barely moving. And her eyes, when they opened, were the color of amber. Startled and wild and terrified in a way that went past fear into something much older. The look of someone who had stopped believing they would be found. For one suspended moment, she stared at Ethan. His size, his knife, his shadow blocking the August sun, and she screamed. Not a loud scream. There wasn't enough air left in her for loud. It was thin and broken, and she thrashed backward into the burlap, and her bound wrists came up between them like she was trying to stop a blow she was already certain was coming. Ethan sat back on his heels immediately. He put the knife on the ground. He raised both hands. "Easy," he said. Low, steady. The voice he used with spooked horses. "Easy now. Nobody's going to hurt you. You have my word on that." She didn't believe him. He could see it in every line of her body. Then Lily stepped around him. She crouched down in the dirt without a moment's hesitation, and she looked at the girl the way only a child could look at a stranger. Without calculation, without fear, with nothing but open recognition. "You're hurt," Lily said. It wasn't a question. "Your hands are bleeding. Does it hurt real bad?" The girl stared at her. "I'm Lily. That's my papa. His name's Ethan." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was making an introduction at church. "He ain't gonna hurt you. He don't hurt nobody. He cried for 3 whole days when our dog Biscuit got bit by a rattler and died." A pause. "Don't tell him I said that." Something shifted behind the girl's eyes. The animal terror backed off. Not much, just 1 inch. And she looked from Lily to Ethan and back again. Ethan kept his voice even. "My daughter's right. I won't hurt you. But I need to get you out of this sun before it finishes what somebody else started. Can you tell me your name?" The girl's lips moved. Barely sound at all. 1 syllable. "Rose," she said. "Rose." He nodded once, slow. "All right. I'm going to pick you up and put you in the wagon. You can fight me if you want. I won't stop you. But we need to get you to water and shade, and we need to do it right now." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she gave the smallest nod he had ever seen in his life. He gathered her up as carefully as he could. She was lighter than he expected, lighter than Lily nearly, and that hit him somewhere low and hard in the chest, because a girl this age had no business being this light. He drove straight back to the ranch. Supplies could wait. She sat in the wagon bed with Lily beside her. He couldn't make out what his daughter was saying. Lily talked the way rivers ran, constant and without apology. But he glanced back twice. Both times, Rose was watching Lily with an expression he couldn't quite name. Not happiness. Something quieter. Like a woman who had forgotten what ordinary conversation felt like, and was very carefully trying to remember if she'd ever had it. When they pulled through the gate and up to the house, Rose looked at the front porch and went still. "That's just our porch," Lily said. "The paint's peeling on the left side, 'cause Papa keeps saying he'll fix it and keeps not fixing it." "I've been busy," Ethan said. "You've been sad," Lily said. He didn't answer that. He helped Rose down from the wagon. She stood on unsteady legs, and her eyes moved across the yard. The barn, the fence line, the road they'd come in on, like she was mapping exits, like she expected someone to come through that gate behind them at any moment. "Ain't nobody following us," Ethan said quietly. She looked at him sharply. "Watch the road the whole way back," he said. "We're alone." She didn't relax entirely, but she let him lead her up the porch steps, through the front door, and into the kitchen. She sat in the chair he pulled out and kept her bound wrists in her lap like she was ashamed of them. He got his knife again, slowly, showing it to her first, and cut the rope. The rope fell away and she made one sharp sound, a single tight breath, because the blood was rushing back into her hands and it hurt. She pressed her lips together and made no other sound after that. And that silence, that practiced, deliberate silence, told Ethan more about what she had endured than anything she could have said out loud. "Lily," he said, "fetch the medicine tin and the clean cloth." "Yes, sir," already moving. He set water on the table. He sat across from her, not beside her, across, giving her the full width of the table between them. He'd learned in his years working with horses and with people that
This
space
story
was the
was
first
posted
gift
on the
you could
channel
offer a
west of
frightened
Betrayal.
thing.
Please do not repost
I ain't
it
going to
in
ask
any
you to
form.
explain yourself, he said. Not right now. You eat, you drink, we clean up those wrists. That's all. Rose stared at the table. Why? Why what? Why are you helping me? She looked up then, and her eyes were raw in a way that had nothing to do with crying, rubbed down to something underneath, something exposed and wary. You don't know me. No, Ethan said. I don't. Then why? He thought about it the way he thought about most things, carefully, without rushing. Because my daughter told me to stop the wagon, he said finally. And she's got better judgment than me, so I stopped. Lily set the medicine tin on the table with a decisive thump. That's the nicest thing Papa's ever said about me. Don't get used to it, he said, and Rose, for just half a second, almost smiled. It was gone as fast as it came, swallowed back down wherever she kept the things she didn't let herself feel anymore. But Ethan saw it, and it lodged somewhere in his chest like a splinter he didn't know what to do with. He worked on her wrists carefully. She didn't flinch, not even when the water hit the open skin, and he filed that away alongside everything else, that particular and terrible absence of flinching where flinching should have been. You hungry? Lily asked her. Rose paused. Yes. Good, 'cause I made biscuits this morning, and Papa said they were almost good, which means they were real good, 'cause Papa don't give compliments easy. I said passable, Ethan said. Almost good, Lily said firmly. She put 3 biscuits on a plate and set it in front of Rose like she was offering something precious. Rose stared at them for a moment. Then she picked one up and ate it, carefully at first, then faster. And Lily pushed the plate an inch closer without saying a word about it. Something about that small, wordless gesture made Ethan look away. Clara used to do exactly that. Push food toward people without making them feel anything about needing it. He wrapped Rose's wrists in clean cloth and tied it off and leaned back. And she was on the second biscuit now, and Lily had settled onto the bench beside her, not touching her, just close, and was telling her about the ranch, the 2 horses, the chickens, the way the creek dried to nothing every August except for one deep pool where the catfish went. Rose listened. She didn't say much, but she listened with her whole body, the way people did when they've been somewhere very quiet for too long. Then Lily turned toward her and looked at her face, the way children looked, direct and without apology, and said something that stopped everything. You got Mama's eyes. The kitchen went quiet. Rose went very still. Ethan's hands stopped moving. Lily reached up and touched Rose's face, not grabbing, just her small fingers resting against Rose's cheek for a moment, gentle and certain at the same time. Mama had amber eyes, Lily said quietly, like honey when the sun goes through it. I almost forgot what color they were. Her fingers dropped away. But I remember now. Rose's throat moved. She looked at Ethan. He looked back. His voice, when it came, was rougher than he meant it to be. Her mother passed 3 years ago. I'm sorry, Rose said. Lily's got her way, he said, of seeing things. It wasn't what he'd meant to say. He wasn't sure what he'd meant to say. He stood up and went to the stove so nobody had to see his face. He gave Rose the spare room. It had been Clara's sewing room, and he hadn't touched it since the funeral, and it still smelled faintly of lavender. He hoped Rose didn't notice. He hoped she did. He wasn't sure anymore which would be worse. Lily showed her where the wash basin was, where the extra blanket was folded at the foot of the bed, where the latch sat on the inside of the door. You can lock it from the inside, Lily said. Papa put that latch there when I was real little, so I could lock my own door and feel safe. Did you need to? Rose asked. Lily thought about it seriously. Not really, but Papa figured I might want to someday, so he put it there. She paused. He does that. Gets things ready before you know you need them. Rose looked at the latch. She looked at Lily. She was quiet for a long moment. Thank you, she said, for finding me. I heard you, Lily said, plain and simple. Everybody makes a sound when they're scared, even when they think they're being quiet. She said it without drama, without weight, and then she slipped out the door and pulled it halfway shut behind her. Rose stood alone in the room. She crossed to the door. She put her bandaged fingers against the latch. She turned it. Ethan was on the porch when Lily came back out, sitting in the old chair with coffee he'd stopped tasting an hour ago, watching the road. Papa? She's scared of something she didn't leave behind. He looked at his daughter. What makes you say that? The way she looked at the road when we drove in. She wasn't looking to see where she was. Lily sat on the porch step and hugged her knees. She was looking to see if something was coming. He didn't say anything for a while. Papa, what do we do if someone comes looking for her? He turned his cup in both hands. Don't know yet. But if they do, Lily. What? One thing at a time. He looked at her. You did right today, stopping the wagon. She nodded like it was the most obvious thing in the world, because to her, it was. He sat with that, the simple, uncomplicated certainty of his 7-year-old daughter, and thought about what it cost, carrying that kind of certainty as the years piled on. He thought about Clara. He thought about the girl in the spare room with her hand on a latch. He thought about the rope burns. And he thought about the brand. He hadn't said anything to Lily about it. He was still finding the right words. But he'd seen it when he'd cleaned Rose's wrists, high on her left forearm, half hidden under the rope damage. A mark burned into the skin with deliberate, careful precision. Not an accident. Not a scar from a fall or a fire. A mark of ownership. The kind men burned into cattle so the world would know who those cattle belonged to. Someone had marked this girl. And someone, sooner or later, was going to come down that road looking for what they believed was theirs. He didn't sleep. He lay in his bed and listened to the ranch settle around him. The creak of the timber, the horses shifting in the barn, the dry summer wind moving through the grass. And he thought about what kind of man put a girl in a burlap sack and left her on a dirt road in August. He came up with answers he didn't like. Around midnight, he heard movement in the house. He was up and in the hall in 3 seconds, rifle already in hand, before he registered the sound. Light footsteps, careful. Someone who knew the house was occupied and didn't want to wake it. He stepped into the kitchen doorway. Rose was standing at the window, just standing, her bandaged hands pressed against the sill, her face close to the glass, looking out at the dark yard. He lowered the rifle. "Can't sleep?" he said. She didn't jump. She'd heard him coming. "No." "Hungry?" "No." He came in, set the rifle against the wall, visible, deliberate, away from both of them, and sat down at the table. "You don't have to talk," he said. "I'm just sitting." She was quiet for a long time. Outside, something moved in the barn. The night was still and heavy, the way August nights got in this country. Pressing down, airless, full of its own heat. "How long were you in there?" he asked finally. "In the sack." She turned from the window. "Since before sunrise." He worked out the hours. Better part of a day. Bound in a burlap sack in August heat. Whoever did it wanted to be certain, he said.
This story
Yes.
was posted on the channel west
And you know
of
who
Betrayal.
did it.
Please do not
She
repost
didn't
it in
answer.
any form.
She didn't deny it either, and that was its own kind of answer. Rose. He kept his voice level. I need you to understand something. I don't know your story. I don't know what you're running from, or what you've done, or what's been done to you. I've got a daughter down that hall, and she matters more to me than anything else on this earth. And I won't pretend I don't think about that. He looked at her straight. But I know what rope marks look like on a person who's been tied up more than once. And I know what that mark on your arm is. The air in the kitchen changed. Rose's chin came up. Her jaw went tight. You saw it. I did. She watched him, waiting for what came next. I don't know what they told you about yourself, Ethan said. I don't know what they made you believe. But that mark... He stopped. He pressed both palms flat on the table. No person gets marked like that unless somebody decided they had the right to own another human being. And nobody has that right. Not in this country. Not anywhere on God's earth. She stared at him. I'm not sending you back, he said. Not tonight, not tomorrow. Not until you stand up and tell me yourself that's what you want. Her eyes, those amber eyes his daughter had said looked like honey in the sun, went wet at the edges. Just the edges. She held it back. Whatever it was, she held it back, because she was very practiced at holding things back. You don't know what you're agreeing to, she said. Probably not. People will come looking for me. I imagine they will. Bad people. A beat. People with badges. He let that sit. The mention of badges was specific, deliberate. It meant she knew exactly who was coming, and she knew what they carried. Tell me when you're ready, he said. I'll be right here. She turned back to the window. He sat with her in silence until the sky started to lighten gray in the east, and the rooster in the yard began his daily argument with the world. She never told him anything more, and he didn't push. But before she went back to the spare room, she stopped in the kitchen doorway. Ethan, she said. It was the first time she'd used his name. Yeah, he said. When they come, she didn't look at him. They'll tell you things about me, things that'll sound true. They might even have papers. A pause, thin as wire. I need you to know, I'm not what they'll say I am. He nodded once. I know. She looked at him then, searching his face for the lie, the way people did when they'd been lied to so many times that honesty started to look suspicious. She didn't find it. She went back to the room. He heard the latch turn. He stayed in the kitchen and watched the sun come up over his land and thought about his wife and his daughter, and a brand burned into a young woman's skin, and what kind of man he intended to be when the test came. He made his decision before the coffee finished brewing. Whatever was coming down that road, he'd meet it on his feet. By mid-morning, the first rider came through the gate. No badge, but he had the look of a man who answered to someone who wore one. Pressed shirt, clean hat despite the road dust, and the particular kind of stillness that came from carrying authority he hadn't personally earned. He stopped his horse at the edge of the yard. Morning, he called out. Name's Prescott. I'm looking for a young woman. Dark hair. Might be injured. Ethan stood on the porch. He didn't come down the steps. Lot of young women in this county. She'd have marks on her wrists. Prescott's eyes moved slowly across the yard. The barn, the house windows, the wagon parked at the side. You see anyone like that on the roads this morning? Can't say I have. The man looked at him for a moment that lasted a beat too long. I see. His voice had something underneath it. Not threat, not quite, but the shape of one. Well, if you do happen to come across her, she's wanted for questioning, in connection with the death of a man. He reached into his coat and produced a folded paper, held it up without offering it. There's a reward. Ethan said nothing. Prescott set the paper on the fence post at the gate. Good day to you, Mr. Cole. He rode back down the road. Ethan watched until the dust settled. Then he walked to the gate, picked up the paper, unfolded it, and read it. The blood in his veins went cold. Because the name at the top wasn't the name of any circuit court or county judge. It was one man's name, Marshal Victor Hale. And beneath the description of Rose Carter, dark hair, amber eyes, identifying mark on left forearm, were 3 words that rearranged everything Ethan thought he understood about what was coming. Return her alive. Not bring to justice. Not deliver to custody. Return her. Like she was property that had run off. Like she was something that needed to be put back where it came from. Ethan folded the paper in half, then in half again. He pressed it flat against his chest and tucked it into his shirt pocket. And he walked back up to the house and through the front door and stood in his own kitchen and looked down the hall at the closed door of the spare room. The latch was turned. She was still there. He put the coffee on, and he started thinking very hard about what happened next. Ethan stood at the kitchen window a long time after he put the coffee on. The paper sat on the table. He'd unfolded it again, couldn't help himself, and read it through 3 more times. Like the words might rearrange themselves into something less ugly on the 4th pass. They didn't. Return her alive. Marshal Victor Hale. A reward figure that would make most men in this county forget their own names for a week. He was still staring at it when Rose appeared in the kitchen doorway. She'd changed into the spare dress Lily had quietly left outside the room. One of Clara's old summer dresses, blue cotton, slightly too big across the shoulders, and she'd washed her face and combed her hair, and she looked young in a way that made his chest ache. Not a girl exactly, but somebody who should have had more years of girlhood before the world got its hands on her. Her eyes went straight to the paper. She didn't ask. She just looked at it and then looked at him, and her face told him she already knew. How long have you known his name? Ethan said. Since before they put me in the sack. Her voice was flat, not emotionless, controlled. There was a difference. Victor Hale doesn't send men to do things he's afraid to put his name on. He sent Prescott here because he wanted you to know it was him. He wanted you to be afraid. Are you afraid of him? She pulled out the chair across from him and sat down, and she folded her hands on the table, the bandaged wrists deliberate and visible, like she was making herself look at them. I was, for a long time. A pause. Fear gets heavy after a while. You either put it down, or it buries you. Lily came padding in from the hallway in bare feet, hair still loose from sleep, and stopped in the kitchen doorway when she saw Rose at the table. "You're up," she said, like this was the best news she'd had all week. "I'm up," Rose said. Lily went directly to the stove, pulled a pan from the hook, and began making eggs with the serious efficiency of a child who'd been cooking her own breakfast for years. "Papa burns them," she said to Rose, without turning around. "He does everything else good, but he burns eggs. Don't let him near the stove in the morning." "I don't burn them," Ethan said. "Every single time, Papa." Rose looked at him. There was something in her expression that might have been amusement, buried under everything else. He looked away first. "I need you to tell me about Hale," he said. "Not the whole story, not right now, but enough that I know what's standing in front of me when he comes." Rose was quiet for a moment. Lily cracked an egg against the pan with clean, practiced confidence. Victor Hale has been marshal of this
This
district
story
for
was
11
posted
years,
on the channel
Rose
west
said.
of Betrayal.
He is also
Please
the
do
man
not
who owns
repost
the
it in
Holloway
any
House
form.
Orphanage in Redstone Creek. On paper, he's the benefactor. Generous man. Pillar of the community. Her voice didn't change pitch, but something in it hardened to a point. In practice, the children at Holloway House work. Farms, mills, private homes. Hale keeps a ledger. Who goes where, how long, what was paid. He calls it apprenticeship. Ethan set his coffee down very carefully. And what do you call it? I call it what it is. The pan hissed on the stove. Lily didn't turn around, but her shoulders had gone still. You were at Holloway House, Ethan said. Since I was 9, Rose looked at her hands. When I was 17, I found the ledger. The real one, not the one he shows to the county assessor. Names, dates, amounts paid, children listed like livestock. She looked up at him. I copied it, every page. I hid the copy, and then I ran. Where's the copy now? She didn't answer immediately. That was an answer in itself. Rose? Somewhere safe, she said. Somewhere he hasn't found it yet. That's why he wants me back alive. Dead, I'm just a runaway. Alive, he can find out where I put it. Her chin tilted up slightly. That's the only leverage I have. Ethan pressed his thumb against the edge of the paper on the table and thought about 11 years and a ledger full of children's names and a man who wore a badge while he did it. Eggs are ready, Lily said. She put a plate in front of Rose, then one in front of Ethan. She sat between them with her own plate, looked at both of them and said, very calmly, I heard what she said, Papa. Ethan looked at his daughter. About the children, Lily said. At the orphanage. Lily, I'm 7, not stupid. She picked up her fork. I know what it means. She looked at Rose. Were there little ones? Younger than me? Rose held her gaze. Yes. Lily nodded once, as if confirming something she'd already decided. She ate a bite of egg. Then she said, still looking at her plate, Then we have to stop him. Ethan opened his mouth. Papa, Lily said, in the voice that brooked no argument, we have to stop him. The kitchen went very quiet except for the morning sounds of the ranch outside. Horses, wind, the dry creak of the yard. Ethan looked at his daughter, who was 7 years old and certain as a compass needle, and he thought about what kind of man he intended to be. Yeah, he said. We do. The trouble came from town before noon. Ethan was at the barn when he heard the wagon on the road, and he knew from the speed of it, too fast for freight, too deliberate for a social call, that it wasn't bringing good news. He walked out to the fence line and waited, and sure enough, it was Margaret Doyle's wagon, and Margaret Doyle herself on the bench, driving like she had somewhere urgent to be and wasn't interested in pleasantries. She pulled up hard and looked down at him from the bench, with her sharp gray eyes, and the particular expression she reserved for men who were about to make her life more complicated. Ethan Cole, she said. Tell me the rumors coming out of Prescott's mouth aren't true. Depend on the rumor. He's telling half the county you're harboring a fugitive. She climbed down from the wagon without waiting for help, because Margaret Doyle did not wait for things, and planted herself in front of him with her arms crossed. A girl wanted by Victor Hale. She's not a fugitive. Prescott says she killed a man. Prescott says what Hale tells him to say. Margaret's eyes narrowed. You know this girl? I found her tied in a burlap sack on the South Road, bound, marked, and left to die in August heat. He said it plain, no drama, because the facts were dramatic enough on their own. I don't know what that sounds like to you, Margaret, but to me it sounds like someone didn't want her talking. The fight went out of Margaret's face, replaced by something harder and less comfortable. Marked how? Branded, high on the left arm. Her mouth pressed into a flat line. She was quiet for a long beat. Holloway House, she said. It wasn't the question. Ethan looked at her. You knew? I've had suspicions for 2 years. Her voice had gone tight and careful. Nothing I could prove. Hale has paper on everything. Documents, letters from churchmen. If you say a word against him in this county, he buries you under legal process and community opinion, and you come out the other side looking like a fool or a troublemaker. She looked at him hard. And now you've got the girl. And now I've got the girl. And Hale knows you've got her. He will by sundown. Margaret turned and looked down the road toward town, and Ethan watched the calculation move across her face. All the things she stood to lose. All the things she might still choose to do anyway. He'd known Margaret Doyle for 11 years. She was not a comfortable woman. She was not a gentle woman. But she was, underneath all that iron, a fair one. I need to talk to her, Margaret said. She's not obligated. I know she's not obligated. I'm asking you, man to man, because I am telling you right now that if what I think is true, then I have been walking past that orphanage for 2 years and done nothing. Her voice cracked on the last word. Just slightly. Just once. And she pulled it back together immediately. I need to talk to her. Ethan stepped back from the fence. Come on then. Rose was on the porch with Lily when they came around the side of the house. Lily had been teaching her cat's cradle with a piece of twine, and they were sitting close together, Rose's bandaged hands holding the string while Lily worked her fingers through it with the focused expression of a surgeon. Rose looked up when she heard footsteps, and the ease dropped out of her posture like water out of a cupped hand. Margaret stopped at the foot of the porch steps. She looked at Rose for a long moment without saying anything. Then she said, I know that, Mark. Rose went very still. I've seen it before, Margaret said. On a boy, 7 years old. He came through my store last fall with one of Hale's farmhands, reaching up to take something off a shelf and his sleeve pulled back. Her jaw was set hard. I asked Hale about it the next day. He told me the boy had an accident with a branding iron. Accident. The word came out of her mouth like something sour. I let him tell me that. I let myself believe it. Rose looked at her hands. Most people do. Not anymore. Margaret climbed the porch steps and sat down in the other chair, and she looked at Rose directly. My name is Margaret Doyle. I run the general store in Caldera Flats. I have no legal standing, no political connections, and one very stubborn mule of a personality. She folded her hands in her lap. Tell me what you need. Something moved in Rose's expression. A loosening, small and careful, like a door opening 1 inch to check the weather. I need a doctor who won't report back to Hale. Samuel Hayes, Margaret said, without hesitating. Doesn't owe Hale anything. Lost his practice in another county, came here 5 years ago. Good man. Quiet. He'll come. I need somewhere to put something. Something I've been carrying. Rose looked at Ethan for a moment, then back at Margaret. Papers. A copy of a ledger. Names, dates, transactions. Proof of what he's been doing at Holloway House for 11 years. The porch went quiet enough that you could hear the grasshoppers in the dry field past the fence. How many names? Margaret said. 46 children, Rose said. That I know of. There may be more in the earlier pages. Lily had let the piece of twine go slack in her hands. She was looking at Rose with an expression Ethan had never seen on his daughter's face before. Something that was trying to understand something that resisted being understood. The way children looked when the world revealed a version of itself they hadn't been told existed yet. "Lily," Ethan said quietly.
This story
Go
was
inside.
posted on the channel
Papa,
West of Betrayal.
Please.
Please do not repost
She
it
went.
in any form.
But she didn't go far. He knew his daughter. And he didn't have the heart to make her go further. "Where are the papers?" Margaret asked. "Hidden in Redstone Creek. I can't go back for them myself." Rose looked at her steadily. "If Hale's men see me anywhere near that town, the papers disappear, and so do I." "Then someone else has to go," Ethan said. Margaret nodded slowly. "I make a supply run to Redstone Creek every 2 weeks. Nobody thinks twice about my wagon." She looked at Rose. "Tell me where." The three of them sat at the kitchen table for the better part of an hour. Rose talked, and Margaret listened, and Ethan listened, and the picture that assembled itself piece by piece in that kitchen on a hot August afternoon was worse than he'd imagined, and cleaner than he'd feared. Because Rose had been meticulous, careful in a way that spoke of someone who had understood from the beginning that the only weapon she was ever going to have was the truth, perfectly documented. She described the ledger in detail, the location of the copy, a loose board in the floor of the livery stable in Redstone Creek, a building where she'd worked a 2-month posting the previous spring. The name of the livery owner, a man named Curtis, who had not known what she was hiding, but who had seen enough in his years to ask no questions. When she was done, Margaret sat back in her chair and looked at the table for a long moment. "This will ruin him," she said quietly. "That's the intention," Rose said. "It'll also put a target on every person in this room." Margaret looked at Ethan. "You understand that?" "Yes," Ethan said. "And you're still—" "Yes." Margaret was quiet for another moment. Then she pushed back her chair and stood up. "I'll ride out to Hayes this evening. He can come out tomorrow morning, check the girl over, document the injuries properly." She looked at Rose. "A doctor's written account of those marks carries weight in a county court. More weight than Hale would like." Rose looked up at her. "Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything." Margaret picked up her hat from the table and set it on her head with the practiced efficiency of a woman who had been settling her own hats for 30 years. "7-year-old boy," she said. "Sleeve pulled back in my store." She walked to the door. "I let myself believe an accident. I don't intend to make that mistake again." She was through the door and down the steps before either of them could answer. Ethan listened to her wagon move back down the road, and then he listened to it disappear, and then he listened to the silence that came after it, and he thought about 46 names in a ledger. "She means it," Rose said. "She's not going to change her mind." "No," Ethan said. "Margaret doesn't change her mind. It's her best quality, and her most exhausting one." Rose almost smiled again. He was getting better at catching those moments before they vanished. "You should rest," he said. "Hayes will be here in the morning, and he'll need you coherent." She nodded, but she didn't move from the table. She sat with her bandaged hands in front of her and looked at the grain of the wood, and he could see something working in her, some calculation, some weight she was deciding whether to put down or carry a little longer. "At Holloway House," she said, very quietly, "there was a girl, younger than me. Her name was Delia, 8 years old when I left." She stopped. Her jaw worked. "She was on the list, placed with a family 60 miles east. I don't know if they were a good family. I don't know if she's—" She stopped again. "I don't know." Ethan said nothing. He just sat there, present, the way you sat with grief that didn't want advice. "If the ledger gets out," Rose said, "if it actually gets to someone who can act on it—" "They'll have to account for every name on that list," Ethan said. She looked at him. "You really believe that?" He thought about it honestly, which meant he didn't answer right away. "I believe there are enough people like Margaret Doyle in this world to make it possible," he said. "And I believe you're the reason those 46 names aren't buried in a courthouse drawer somewhere." Her throat moved. Then Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway again. She'd made it approximately 11 minutes, which Ethan privately thought was a personal record. And she had the piece of twine in her hands and a look on her face that said she'd heard more than she was going to admit to. She crossed to Rose's side of the table and sat down. She held out the twine. "I still haven't shown you the double diamond," she said. "It's harder, but it's prettier." Rose looked at her. Something broke open in her expression for just a second, real and unguarded, the way things were when you weren't expecting to be moved. She took the twine. "Show me," she said. The rider came at dusk. Not Prescott this time, not the soft-spoken errand runner with the reward paper. This man came alone, and he came without hurry, which was more frightening than speed. He sat his horse at the gate, and he didn't call out, and he didn't shift in the saddle. He just sat there, outlined against the dropping sun, and waited. Ethan stepped out onto the porch with his rifle and looked at him across the yard. The man removed his hat. Even at this distance, even at dusk, the star on his chest caught the last red light and threw it back. Not one of Hale's hired men. Not a messenger. The badge was federal. "Mr. Cole," the man called out. His voice was deep and unhurried, the voice of someone who had learned that volume was rarely necessary if you had enough authority behind the words. "My name is Marshal Victor Hale. I was hoping we might have a conversation." The air changed. Everything changed. Behind Ethan, through the closed door, he heard the kitchen go absolutely silent. And he understood, in that moment, that the thing he'd been preparing for all day had arrived. He stood on his porch, with his rifle at his side, and looked at the man at his gate, and he felt the full weight of what he'd committed to when he'd decided that morning, over coffee, to be a particular kind of man. He tipped his hat. "Gate's open," he said. Victor Hale rode through the gate like a man who owned the property and was simply choosing to be polite about it. He was not what Ethan had expected, and he suspected that was deliberate. No bluster, no hard jaw, no hand resting near iron. Hale was perhaps 50, well-built and well-dressed, with a face that had been constructed over decades for the specific purpose of making people trust him. Warm eyes, the kind of smile that arrived slightly before it was needed, like it had been waiting just off stage. He dismounted easy, tied his horse to the post himself. A man comfortable enough with his own power that he didn't need anyone else to hold his horse, and came across the yard with his hat in his hand. "Mr. Cole," he said, "thank you for seeing me." "Didn't have much choice," Ethan said. "A man sits at my gate long enough, I either come out or I don't. Either way tells him something." Hale smiled. It reached his eyes, and that was the troubling part. "You're direct. I appreciate that." He stopped at the foot of the porch steps and looked up at Ethan, not intimidated by the rifle, not pretending it wasn't there, just acknowledging it the way a man acknowledged weather. "Mind if I sit? It's been a long ride." "I do mind," Ethan said. "Say what you came to say." Something moved behind Hale's eyes, a flicker, gone fast, but Ethan caught it and filed it. "All right," Hale said. "I'll be honest with you, man to man. I'm looking for a young woman named Rose Carter. She was in my care at the Holloway House for 9 years. Last week, she attacked a member of my staff, a man named Gerald Webb, and left him in a serious condition. She then ran." He paused. "I'm not here to see her punished, Mr. Cole. I'm here because I'm worried about her." Rose has had a difficult life, and sometimes difficult lives produce
This story was
instability.
posted on the channel
The
West
word
of
landed like
Betrayal.
he'd intended it
Please
to.
do not repost it
Soft.
in any form.
Clinical. The kind of word that reframed a person without raising a voice. Instability, Ethan said. Mental and emotional distress. She's told stories before. Elaborate ones. It's part of her condition. Hale's voice was full of carefully constructed sadness. I'd hate for a good man to put his family at risk, based on the word of someone who cannot, through no fault of her own, be fully relied upon. Ethan looked at him for a long moment. What did this Webb do to her before she hit him? The smile stayed, but it went still. I'm sorry? Gerald Webb, your staff member. What did he do to her before she fought back? Ethan's voice hadn't changed. Same flat, steady register he used for everything. Because in my experience, a person who's spent 9 years being told she's unstable and kept where she can't leave doesn't just attack someone on a Tuesday for no reason. Hale tilted his head slightly. The warmth dialed back just a fraction. Not enough for a stranger to see, but enough for a man paying attention. I can see she's already spoken to you. I can see you didn't answer my question. Mr. Cole. Webb, Ethan said. What did he do? Hale looked at him for a long, careful moment. Then he took a slow breath and shifted slightly. And when he spoke again, his voice had changed. Not much, just enough. The warmth was still there, but underneath it now was something harder, the actual ground beneath the performance. I have a federal warrant, Hale said, signed by a district judge, for the arrest and return of Rose Carter on charges of aggravated assault. He reached into his coat, slowly, watching Ethan, and produced a folded document. He held it out. Ethan didn't take it. Leave it on the post. Hale set it on the railing. I have 4 deputies in Caldera Flats as of this afternoon. I have the full backing of the federal district office. He said it without raising his voice. That was the most frightening version of a threat, the one delivered quietly, by someone who didn't need volume. I don't want trouble with you. You seem like a decent man. You've got a daughter. His eyes moved briefly to the front window and back. I'd like this resolved peacefully. Then ride back to Caldera Flats, Ethan said, and wait for me to come to you with what I decide. I can give you until tomorrow morning. I didn't ask for a timeline. Hale held his gaze for 3 full seconds. Then he settled his hat back on his head and nodded once, with the expression of a man making a very specific mental note. Tomorrow morning, he said. I hope you make the right choice. He untied his horse, mounted smooth and easy, and rode back through the gate without looking back. Ethan stood on the porch and watched him go, and did not move until the sound of hooves had completely disappeared. Then the front door opened behind him. Rose stood in the doorway. Her face was the color of chalk. You heard, he said. Every word. He turned around. Did he tell the truth? About Webb? Her jaw went rigid. Gerald Webb was a man who believed that the girls at Holloway House were placed there for his convenience. She said it without inflection, like she was reading a legal document. When I told Hale, Hale told me I was confused. When I told Hale a second time, he locked me in the root cellar for 4 days. A beat. The third time Webb came near me, I hit him with a harness buckle, and I ran. Ethan put his rifle against the wall. How badly did you hurt him? Not badly enough. Rose, he's alive, she said. He was walking when I left. The warrant is a pretext. Hale needs me back before the ledger surfaces. Webb is the excuse. She pressed one hand against the doorframe, like she needed the anchor. He's going to keep coming. You know that. Yes. He has 4 deputies in town. I heard. Ethan. Something broke through the controlled surface. Not collapse, not panic, but something honest and exhausted underneath. I don't want your daughter hurt because of me. I don't want your ranch. Stop, he said. You don't understand what he does to people who... Rose. His voice was quiet and final. I made my decision this morning. I'm not in the habit of unmaking them. He picked up the warrant from the railing, folded it, put it in his pocket with a reward paper. Right now, I need you to write down everything you told Margaret today. Everything about the ledger, the location, the names. We're going to need it on paper before tomorrow. She stared at him. Why? Because if something happens to me, he said, Margaret needs enough to go on without either of us. He didn't sleep again that night, and he didn't pretend to try. He sat at the kitchen table with pen and paper and worked through what he had and what he needed. And Rose sat across from him and wrote steadily for an hour. Everything she remembered from the ledger, in order, without prompting. Her handwriting was small and precise, and she didn't pause to think, which told him she'd been holding those 46 names in her head for a long time, carrying them the way you carried the names of the dead. Around midnight, Lily came in and sat between them without asking permission. Nobody told her to go back to bed. She sat with her elbows on the table and watched them work, and she didn't ask questions, and she didn't try to help. She just sat there, present, the way she'd been sitting with injured things her whole short life. At one point, Rose looked up and saw Lily watching her, and something in Rose's face went terribly soft for just a moment. You should sleep, Rose said. I sleep fine, Lily said. I just don't want to right now. Rose looked at her a moment longer. Then she went back to writing. It was Lily who broke the silence, 20 minutes later, in the particular way she had of breaking silences, not with noise, but with precision. He's going to lie about you in town, she said to Rose. Isn't he? Rose didn't look up. He already has. Will people believe him? Some. Enough. Rose set her pen down. He's been the marshal for 11 years. He knows which people need a favor, which people owe him one, which people are afraid of him. He's very good at his job. She said it without bitterness, just honesty. What about Dr. Hayes? Ethan said. Margaret wrote out to him last evening, Lily said. Both adults looked at her. I watched from the window. She came back without stopping, and she was riding fast, which means it went well, because Margaret rides slow when she's disappointed. Ethan looked at his daughter with an expression that was equal parts exasperation and pride. When exactly did you turn into a spy? I pay attention, Lily said. There's a difference. Rose almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. Dr. Samuel Hayes arrived before 7 the next morning, driving a battered wagon and wearing the expression of a man who had made his peace with inconvenience. He was 60 or so, lean and deliberate in his movements, with eyes that took things in without broadcasting his conclusions. He shook Ethan's hand on the porch, said nothing unnecessary, and went inside. He spent 40 minutes with Rose in the spare room with the door closed. When he came out, he sat at the kitchen table and accepted the coffee Lily poured him, and he was quiet for a moment before he spoke. The injuries to her wrists are consistent with extended restraint, he said. The rope marks are layered, not from one incident. Several. He set his cup down. The mark on her arm was applied with a purpose-made iron. Precise. Not accidental. He looked at Ethan directly. I've documented everything. Measurements, descriptions, My professional assessment of causation and duration. It will hold up in front of a county judge or a federal review board. Will you testify to it? Ethan said. Hayes was quiet
This
for a half
story was
second.
posted on the channel
The pause
west
of a man who
Betrayal.
knew exactly
Please
what
do
he
not
was agreeing
repost it
to
in any form.
and was agreeing to it anyway. Yes, he said. I will. Then his expression shifted, and Ethan felt the change before Hayes said the next word. There's something else, Hayes said. Say it. Hayes looked at his coffee. I treated Gerald Webb. 3 weeks ago, before all this. A separate matter, routine call. While I was there, I saw 2 of the Holloway House children who'd been brought to Webb's farm on what Hale called a work posting. He stopped. One of them had a broken wrist that had been set wrong and healed wrong. The other had marks consistent with... He stopped again. His jaw worked. I reported it to the county office. I was told the children were being assessed and the matter was under investigation. He looked up. There was no investigation. The kitchen was absolutely silent. I should have pushed harder, Hayes said. I told myself there was a process, that the right people were looking into it. He pressed both hands flat against the table. There was no process. The right people were Hale. Lily, who had been standing at the edge of the room, very quietly walked out the back door. Ethan let her go. He understood the particular feeling she was carrying out with her. The feeling of understanding something you couldn't unfeel. How fast can you get that documentation to a federal office outside this district? Ethan said. If I ride to Millhaven today, I can have it in front of a federal circuit judge by tomorrow morning. Man named Aldrich. He and Hale have no connection. Different political appointments, different sponsors. Hayes looked at him steadily. But once I do that, Hale will know, and he will move fast. How fast? By nightfall tomorrow, if he wants to shut it down before Aldrich can act on it. Ethan did the math. Margaret wouldn't reach Redstone Creek until tomorrow afternoon. Hayes could reach Millhaven by tomorrow morning. That left a window. Not a wide one, not a comfortable one, but a window. Then you leave within the hour, Ethan said. Hayes nodded and stood up. Then the back door opened and Lily came back in. She was holding something in both hands, a folded piece of oilcloth bound with twine. She set it on the table in front of Rose. Rose stared at it. Her face changed completely. Where did you get that? Rose said. Not a question, barely a sound. You had it in the pocket of your dress, Lily said, with perfect calm. The dress you came in. I found it when I was washing it this morning. A pause. I didn't read it. The cloth was sealed. She stepped back from the table. It felt important. Rose put both hands on the oilcloth package. Her bandaged fingers pressed against it like she was confirming it was real. Then she looked up at Ethan. It's the ledger copy, she said. Her voice had dropped to something barely above a breath. Not the one in Redstone Creek. The other copy, she swallowed. I made 2. I didn't tell anyone I made 2. The air in the room compressed. Hayes had gone completely still. Ethan looked at Rose. You've had it this whole time? In the pocket of my dress, sewn in. When they put me in the sack, they took my boots, my bag. They didn't check my dress. She looked at the package. I'd forgotten it was there. I was barely... She stopped, pressed her lips together. When Lily found me in the sack, I wasn't thinking about the ledger. I wasn't thinking about anything except... breathing, Lily said quietly. Rose looked at her. Yes. Hayes crossed to the table in 3 steps. If that's a complete copy, every page, Rose said, then we don't need Redstone Creek. He looked at Ethan. This goes with me to Millhaven. Today. Ethan put his hand out. Rose looked at it, then at him. I'll get it back to you, he said, when it's done its work. She picked up the package and put it in his hand, and held onto it for 1 second before letting go. Hayes took it from Ethan, put it inside his coat, and buttoned his coat over it. "I'll ride out the north fence line," he said. "Hale's men are watching the main road." "Take the creek trail past Henderson's," Ethan said. "Comes out on the north side of town. They won't expect it." Hayes nodded. He shook Ethan's hand again, firmly, the grip of a man sealing something, and then he looked at Rose. "I should have acted sooner," he said. "I'm sorry." Rose looked at him steadily. "Act now," she said. "That's enough." He was out the door in 30 seconds. They heard his wagon moving, carefully, quietly, away from the main road. The silence he left behind lasted exactly 4 minutes. Then they heard horses on the main road. More than one. Moving together, the organized rhythm of men riding in formation. Ethan went to the window. 4 riders, moving slow and deliberate toward the gate. Not Hale himself, his deputies, and one of them was carrying something long in his right hand. Not a rifle. A paper. The kind served in courts. "What is it?" Rose said behind him. He turned around. "Stay in the back of the house. Don't come out regardless of what you hear." "Ethan, Rose." He looked at her hard. "Hayes has the ledger and a 2-hour head start. Whatever happens in the next 10 minutes, that matters more than anything else. You understand?" Her jaw was set, and her eyes were sharp, and everything in her body said she wanted to argue. But she understood. He could see the moment she understood, and she gave him one short nod and moved back down the hall. He heard the latch turn. He picked up his rifle. He walked out to the porch. The 4 deputies were at the gate. The one with the paper dismounted and came forward and held it up. "Ethan Cole," the man said, "I have a judicial order authorizing the search of this property for Rose Carter, wanted on federal warrant. You are required by law to stand aside and permit—" "That paper signed by Aldrich in Millhaven?" Ethan said. The deputy stopped. "Because if it ain't," Ethan said, "it was signed by a man who has a financial interest in the outcome, which makes it worth less than the paper it's written on." He looked at the 4 of them. "I'm familiar with the statute. Are you?" The deputy glanced at the others. Quickly, Ethan caught it. They hadn't expected that. "Sir, this warrant was signed this morning," Ethan said, "by Victor Hale's own district judge, a man Hale put on the bench 3 years ago." He kept his voice level, his rifle at his side, not raised, not put down. "I have a doctor on his way to Millhaven right now with documented evidence of federal crimes committed by Victor Hale against minor children in his custody. That evidence will be in front of Judge Aldrich before sundown." He looked at each of the 4 men in turn. "Now, you are welcome to arrive in here and conduct your search, but I want you to think carefully about whose name you want attached to this action 24 hours from now." The deputy with the papers stood very still. The one on the far right shifted his horse. The one second from left looked down the road the way Hayes had gone, like he'd heard something, then looked back. "We'll return," the deputy said tightly. "I'll be here," Ethan said. They rode back toward town. He watched them all the way to the bend in the road. Then he let out one slow breath. His hands had not shaken. He was mildly surprised. The front door opened behind him. Rose was standing in the doorway, which meant she had heard everything and had decided that his instructions applied to the back of the house specifically and not to doorways in general. He decided this was not the moment to argue the point. "That bought us time," she said. "Not much." "No," he agreed. "When Hale finds out Hayes is on the road to Millhaven." "He'll move tonight," Ethan said. "Not through deputies. Himself." She went quiet. He could hear her thinking, the particular quality of silence that meant a mind working fast and clean. "There's something I didn't tell Hayes," she said. He turned. "The ledger." She stepped out onto the porch. "The entries at the back.
This
the
story
most
was
recent
posted
ones.
on the channel
The
west
last
of Betrayal.
3 names listed."
Please do not repost it
She
in any
stopped.
form.
Her voice had gone very controlled, the way it went when she was holding something in that hurt to hold. "They're not children from Holloway House." "Then who are they?" She looked at him straight. "Witnesses," she said. "People who knew what Hale was doing, who tried to speak about it." She let that sit for exactly 1 second. 2 of them disappeared. The third was a woman in Redstone Creek. She died in a fire, ruled accidental. The word accidental hung in the air between them exactly the same way it had when Hayes had used it. Ethan's grip on the rifle tightened once. Just once. "He kills people who talk," he said. "He has killed people who talk," Rose said. "Yes." And standing on that porch in the August heat, Ethan Cole understood for the first time with total clarity that this was not a legal dispute. It was not a matter of warrants and judges and courtroom procedure. It was a man who had been doing whatever he wanted for 11 years, to whoever he wanted, and who had never once been stopped. And he was coming tonight. Ethan sent Lily to the Doyle place before sunset. He didn't ask. He told her, in the voice that wasn't negotiable, and she looked at him for a long moment with Clara's eyes and his own stubbornness. And then she said, "For how long?" "Until I come get you." "That could be a long time." It could. She looked at Rose, who was standing in the kitchen doorway. Something passed between them. The 2 of them had developed a language in 48 hours that Ethan couldn't fully read. The particular shorthand of people who understood each other without needing the long way around. Rose crouched down to Lily's level. She held the girl's face in both bandaged hands, careful and firm. "You listen to your papa," Rose said. "I always listen," Lily said. "I just don't always agree." "This time, you agree." Lily searched her face. "Are you going to be here when I get back?" Rose held her gaze without flinching. "I'm going to try very hard to be." It was the most honest thing she could have said. Lily seemed to understand that, because she nodded, one short, certain nod. And she picked up her small bag from the floor, and she let Ethan walk her out to the horse without a single argument. He rode with her to the edge of the property, watched her take the road toward the Doyle place at a good pace, and watched her all the way to where the road bent east and she disappeared. Then he rode back. The ranch was quiet when he came through the gate. Rose was on the porch, and she had his spare rifle across her knees, and she was checking the load with the practiced ease of someone who had learned that skill the hard way and not forgotten it. He stopped his horse and looked at her. "Where'd you learn to handle a rifle?" he said. "Holloway House," she said, without looking up. "One of the farmhands. He said every person had the right to know how to protect themselves." She closed the chamber. "Hale dismissed him 6 months later. Called him a bad influence." She looked up. "He was the only adult in that place who ever told us the truth about anything." Ethan tied his horse and came up the steps. "I'm not going to tell you to go inside." "Good," she said, "because I wouldn't." He sat in the other chair. The sun was all the way down now, and the August dark had settled in thick and warm, and somewhere past the fence line, the cicadas were going full voice. Any other evening, it would have been peaceful. "He'll come with enough men that the law looks clean," Ethan said. "He won't come alone. Too much risk that I put him down and claim self-defense. He needs witnesses. His own men as witnesses. Still, witnesses in a federal report." Rose was quiet for a moment. "There's something I've been thinking about," she said, "since this afternoon. When you called out the deputies about the warrant. Yeah. They hesitated. She looked at him. Not all 4, but 2 of them. The ones on the right side. They looked at each other before the lead man spoke. She paused. Those weren't Hale's true believers. Those were men doing a job. Ethan thought about that. You think they're reachable? I think a man who hesitates in that moment is a man who hasn't decided yet which side of this he wants to be standing on when it's over. She set the rifle across her knees again. Hale is used to people who follow orders. He's not used to people who make him explain himself. Then we make him explain himself. She looked at him. In front of his own men. In front of everyone. A beat passed between them. The kind that meant they'd arrived at the same place from different directions, and both recognized it. Margaret, Rose said. She'll be back from Redstone Creek by morning. She went for the second copy. Now that Hayes has the first, whatever she finds becomes corroboration. Ethan leaned back in the chair. 2 separate copies, documented injuries, a doctor's sworn testimony, and 46 names. He looked at the road. That's not a thing you bury under paperwork. That's a thing that ends careers. It's a thing that ends freedom, Rose said. If it reaches the right people. Hayes will make sure it does. You trust him? I trust that he's angry enough, Ethan said. Angry and guilty both. That's a combination that moves men. Rose leaned her head back. She was quiet long enough that he thought she might have let herself drift. Exhaustion winning over vigilance for one unguarded minute. And then she spoke. I used to make up stories about my parents, she said, at Holloway House, when I was small. I told the other children my father was a rancher, somewhere west, that he was coming to get me. A pause. I described him so many times, I could see him. Big hands, steady voice, the kind of man who fixed things before you knew they were broken. She didn't look at him. I stopped believing it when I was 12, but I kept telling it to the little ones, because they needed it to be true. Ethan said nothing for a while. The cicadas filled the space. What happened to the little ones you told the story to? He said, finally. Some got placed out. Some aged out and left. Her voice stayed level. Some got placed out, and I know from the ledger they went somewhere that wasn't what the paperwork said. She pressed her lips together. Delia was the last one I told it to. 8 years old. She'd fall asleep believing her father was coming. She stopped. I can't stop thinking about whether she's still believing it. When this is over, Ethan said, and Hale's name is in front of a federal court, they'll have to account for every placement on that list. Every child. They'll have to find them. And if some of them can't be found? He looked at her straight. Then that becomes evidence of something worse, and it buries him deeper. He held her gaze. Delia is on that list. Her name doesn't disappear. Something happened in Rose's face. A fracture, small and deep. The kind that appeared when a person had been holding a weight so long they'd forgotten they were holding it, and then someone else acknowledged it. She looked away before he could see any more of it. They're coming, she said. Yeah, he said. They are. I need you to know something before they do. She looked back at him. Her voice was even and deliberate, the way it got when she was saying the thing underneath the thing. Whatever happens tonight, you and Lily are not part of the risk I intended. When I was in that sack, I wasn't thinking about pulling anyone else into this. I was thinking about surviving long enough to get the ledger out. Her jaw worked. I didn't mean to put your life in my problem. Ethan looked at her for a moment. You know what I was doing the morning Lily found you? She shook her head. Driving to town for flour and boot nails. He kept his voice dry and plain. Not exactly a man with a
This
full
story
life
was
waiting on him.
posted on the channel west
He tipped
of
his
Betrayal.
chin toward the dark
Please
yard.
do not repost it in any
Clara's
form.
been gone 3 years. Ranch runs itself well enough. Lily has her cat's cradle and her chickens and her opinions, and she does fine. But there is a version of a life, and there is a life, and I had one of them. He paused. I reckon you showed up at a time when a man needed a reason to be more than functional. The silence that followed was different from the other silences. Not tense, not strategic, just real. That might be the most feeling you've said at once, Rose said. Don't get used to it, he said. She almost laughed. He heard it, the shape of it, before she pulled it back. But it was there, real and unguarded, and exactly the sound he imagined it would be. Then the horses in the barn started up. Both of them were on their feet in one motion. Ethan heard them before he saw them. Multiple horses, the road from the north this time, not the main gate road, the back fence road that ran along the property line. They'd circled around. He'd half expected it. He looked at Rose. Back of the house, kitchen door. I told you. I'm not hiding you, he said. I'm positioning you. If they come through the front, I need someone at the back who can move. He took the rifle from her hands and replaced it with his spare pistol, handle first. You know how to use this. She took it. Yes. Then use it if you have to, and not before. She went. He heard her cross the kitchen and take position at the back window, and he went to the front of the porch and stood and waited. Hale came through the back gate with 6 men. Not deputies this time. These were harder men, the kind who'd been hired for this specifically, not for their commitment to the law, but for their commitment to outcomes. They spread out in the yard in practiced formation, 2 to each side, 2 staying with the horses. Hale rode to the center and stopped. Mr. Cole. His voice was exactly the same as the evening before. Measured, warm. The voice of a reasonable man asking a reasonable thing. That was the part that was truly frightening. I asked you for a decision by morning. I've thought about it, and I've decided I can't wait that long. Breaking into a man's property after dark, Ethan said. That's not how federal marshals operate. I have authorization. You have paper you wrote yourself, signed by a judge you appointed. Ethan kept his voice flat. That's not authorization. That's theater. Something shifted in the yard. He felt it before he saw it. A change in the posture of the men spread out in the dark. The formation had been confident. Now it was listening. Hale's voice stayed smooth. Where is she, Ethan? Gone, Ethan said. A beat. I don't believe you. Doesn't change the truth of it. He looked at Hale across the dark yard. She's not on this property. Your search will find nothing. Then you won't mind if we look? I mind the manner of the looking. Ethan stepped to the edge of the porch. 6 men, back gate, full dark. You didn't come to conduct a legal search, Victor. You came to make a problem go away before morning.
This story was posted
He
on the
raised his
channel
voice
west
just
of
enough,
Betrayal.
not shouting,
Please do not
just
repost it
carrying.
in any form.
Carrying to where 6 other men could hear it clearly. Because by morning, a federal circuit judge in Millhaven is going to have documentation of what you've been doing at Holloway House for 11 years. The yard went absolutely still. Hale's horse shifted. He brought it steady, but his hands were tighter on the reins. That's a serious accusation, he said. His voice hadn't changed. He was very good, but Ethan was looking for the tells now. The slight delay before each response, the hands on the reins, the way his eyes moved across his own men and came back. He was worried about his own men. 46 children, Ethan said. Named, placed, bought and sold. Your handwriting in your ledger. He let that land. 1 copy is already in Millhaven. The second copy is on its way to the state capitol by morning. He watched Hale's face. You've got nothing to bury. You're bluffing, Hale said. Am I? Ethan said. You put that girl in a burlap sack because she had evidence. If she didn't have evidence, you'd have just let her run. He looked at the 6 men. He told you she was dangerous, unstable, a criminal. But a man doesn't put a girl in a sack in August because she's a criminal. He does it because he's afraid of what she's carrying. The man on the far left, one of the 2 Ethan had noticed hesitating at the gate in the afternoon, moved his horse 1 step sideways, out of formation. Barely noticeable, but Ethan noticed. Hale noticed, too. Caldwell, Hale said to the man, low and sharp. Hold position. Caldwell didn't move back into the formation. He didn't move forward either. He sat his horse slightly outside the line and said nothing. And that silence was the loudest thing in the yard. You been working for him long? Ethan said to Caldwell. Caldwell's jaw worked. 4 years. You know about the orphanage? A pause. I knew he ran one. You know about the ledger? Longer pause. No. He didn't tell you what kind of man you were working for, Ethan said. That was deliberate. Men who know tend to have second thoughts. He looked across the full line of them. Any of you want to tell me Hale warned you what tonight was about? What you were really riding into? He waited. Nobody spoke. Because if you execute an illegal search on my property based on a fraudulent warrant, and by morning a federal judge in Millhaven is looking at documented evidence of crimes against children, you're not deputies anymore. You're accessories. Hale moved his horse forward, closing the distance between them, and his voice dropped to something that was just for Ethan. Last chance, Hale said. Give her to me. I'll forget the rest of this. You keep your ranch, your daughter, your life. Whatever she told you, it's the story of a disturbed girl. It won't hold. It already held, Ethan said. It's in Millhaven. Hale stared at him, and for the first time, behind the warm eyes and the practiced ease, Ethan saw what was actually there. Cold, calculating fury. Not rage, not the kind that made men reckless, the kind that made them precise and very, very dangerous. You don't know what you've done, Hale said quietly. I know exactly what I've done. Then the back door of the house opened, and Rose walked out. Not running, not hiding. She came around the side of the house and walked into the yard, and she stopped 10 feet from Hale's horse. And she stood there in the August dark, with the pistol at her side and her chin up and her amber eyes steady as anything Ethan had ever seen. Every man in the yard went still. Hale looked at her. His expression changed, a flash of something he couldn't control, relief and anger and hunger all at once, gone as fast as it came. Rose, he said. He brought the warmth back into his voice like pulling on a coat. There you are. Here I am, she said. I was worried about you. Come on now, let's go home. I was in a burlap sack on the South Road, she said. You put me there. Say that out loud. Rose, say it, Victor. Her voice didn't shake. Tell these men why we're all standing in this yard tonight. Tell them what I have and why you want me back. She looked at the line of riders. He runs Holloway House, has for 11 years. The children there work. They're placed out to farms, mills, private homes. Money changes hands for each placement. The placement fees go into a private account, not the orphanage
This story
fund,
was posted
not
on
the
the
county
channel
charity
west of
trust.
Betrayal.
His
Please do not
account.
repost it in
She
any
spoke
form.
clearly, without rush. I have the ledger, the real one. 46 names, dates, amounts. His signature on every page. Caldwell made a sound, low, involuntary. The man beside him said, under his breath, "Lord Almighty." Hale's hand moved toward his coat. "Don't." Ethan's rifle came up in one clean motion. Hale's hand stopped. The yard was frozen. "Caldwell," Ethan said, without lowering the rifle, "you and your men are going to turn your horses around and ride back to Caldera Flats. In the morning, you're going to present yourselves to the county sheriff, not Hale, the county sheriff. And you're going to tell him exactly what happened tonight." Caldwell looked at Hale. Then he looked at Ethan. Then he looked at Rose. "The girl," he said slowly, "in the ledger. How young?" "The youngest placeman I found recorded," Rose said, "was 4 years old." Caldwell looked away. His jaw moved. When he looked back, something in his face had closed permanently on one side and opened on the other. "Boys," he said to the men beside him, "we're done here." Hale spun his horse toward them. "Caldwell, I will have your badge, your land, and every Marshal Hale." Caldwell's voice had changed, flat and final. "With respect. Shut up." 3 of the 6 men turned their horses and walked them back through the gate. The other 2 looked at Hale, and then at the direction the first 3 had gone, and then they followed. Hale sat alone in the yard, just him and his horse and the August dark, and Ethan on the porch with a rifle, and Rose standing 10 feet away with a pistol, and 9 years of Holloway House, and 46 names, and the expression of a woman who had decided somewhere between the sack and this yard that she was entirely done being afraid of this man. "You have nowhere to put this," Hale said. His voice had finally lost the warmth. What was left was stripped down and ugly. 1 doctor's testimony, a girl's word, a copy of a ledger that my lawyers will call a forgery. 2 copies, Rose said. 2 separate doctors. Margaret Doyle's eyewitness account. Caldwell and his men. She tilted her head slightly. And the 3 witnesses you had removed. The woman in Redstone Creek, the 2 men who disappeared. Their names are at the back of the ledger too, Victor. In your handwriting. She paused. You recorded everything. You were so sure you were untouchable that you kept records. A beat. That was your mistake. Hale went very still. Gerald Webb, Rose said. He'll talk. When he understands there's no umbrella to stand under anymore, he'll talk. Men like Webb always talk. She looked at him with amber eyes that had seen everything he was and refused to look away from any of it. You're done. Hale looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Ethan. This isn't over, Hale said.
This story
It is
was
for
posted
tonight,
on the channel
Ethan
west
said.
of Betrayal.
Get off my
Please
property.
do not repost it in any form.
Another long moment. The horse stamped once. The cicadas went on. And Victor Hale turned his horse and rode out through the back gate alone. And the dark swallowed him up. And the sound of hooves faded until there was nothing left of him but the echo. Rose stood in the yard after he was gone and didn't move for a full 10 seconds. Then the pistol lowered to her side, and she let out one long breath, and her shoulders came down from somewhere near her ears, and she stood there in the August night and just breathed. Ethan came down the porch steps. He stopped beside her. You weren't supposed to come out, he said. I know, she said. I told you to stay at the back window. I heard you. Rose, I am done, she said, quiet and absolute. Letting that man stand in front of people and perform, while I stay out of sight. She looked at him. I am done with that. He looked at her for a moment. Fair enough, he said. He's not finished, she said. You know that. I know. He's going to try to reach Hayes before morning. Block him before he gets to Aldrich. I know that too. Ethan looked toward the road. There's one thing he doesn't know yet. What? Margaret wasn't going to Redstone Creek for the second copy. He looked at Rose. She was going to Redstone Creek to talk to Curtis at the livery, the man who hid the copy for you. He paused. And to a woman named Elsa Thorne, a reporter. She covers the district for the Millhaven Courier. He watched Rose's face. I sent word with Margaret this morning, before Hayes even left. Rose stared at him. When did you... Before the deputies came with the warrant, he said. I wrote the letter when you were writing down the ledger contents last night. She stared at him for another full second. You didn't tell me. No, he said. I didn't know how things would go today. If I'd told you, and it fell apart, that'd be one more thing you were carrying. His voice was matter-of-fact, no drama in it. Seemed better to have it already moving. Rose looked at him the way people looked at things that were not what they'd expected to find. Elsa Thorne, she said slowly. She wrote the piece 2 years ago, about the county poor fund, about where the money actually went. She did. Hale tried to pull her credentials, ran her out of Caldera Flats. He did, Ethan said. Which means she's been waiting 2 years for something she can actually print. He looked at Rose steadily. A documented ledger, a doctor's testimony, a first-hand witness account, and 6 former deputies who just walked away from a midnight enforcement action. He paused. That's not just a county story. Understanding moved through Rose's face in stages, slow, then faster, then landing somewhere large. That's a federal story, she said. Front page, Ethan said. Above the fold. She looked at him for a long, unguarded moment. And then something happened that he hadn't seen from her yet. Not the almost smiles, not the fractured edges, not the controlled composure holding everything else in. Something deeper. Her eyes went wet, just the edges again, the same way they had in the kitchen the first morning. But this time, she didn't hold it back all the way. You did all that, she said, yesterday morning, when you barely knew me. Lily knew you, he said simply. That was enough. She pressed the back of her hand against her mouth for 1 second. 1 second only. Then she lowered it, and her chin came up, and she was herself again. But the kind of herself that had just set something down and stood a little differently for the having done it. We're not safe yet, she said. No, he agreed. Not until morning. He'll move tonight, against Hayes. Margaret's cousin drives the north route to Millhaven. I asked her to make sure Hayes didn't ride alone. He looked at her. They left together, 2 hours before you knew Hayes was gone. Rose stared at him. I've been doing this quietly since morning, Ethan said. Not with pride, just plainly. Because the loudest move was never going to be the right one. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I need to tell you something. Something I haven't told anyone. He waited. The last entry in the ledger, she said. The most recent one. The name. She stopped. It's not a child's name. It's not a witness. She looked at him. It's mine. The yard was very quiet. He wrote me into the ledger, she said. Not as a resident. Not as a runaway. She held his gaze. As owned. Current. Estimated value. Her voice stayed even. He never intended to run me through the legal system. He never intended charges, courts, any of it. She said the next word like it was something she was putting down on the ground between them, placing it there carefully. He intended to sell me. Ethan stood very still. That's why the sack, she said. Not to kill me, to transport me, to whoever he'd already found. Her eyes were dry now, fully controlled, and that was the most frightening version of this revelation. Delivered not in collapse, but in the clear, exhausted voice of someone who had already processed the worst of it, alone, in the dark, before this moment. I found the entry the night before I ran. That's what I saw in the ledger that finally made me move. The August dark pressed in around them. Somewhere past the fence line, a horse called out and went quiet. And Ethan Cole understood that this young woman standing in his yard had not simply been running from a man who wanted her silenced. She had been running from a man who had already determined her price. He said one thing, and he said it quietly, and he meant it the way he had meant very few things in his life. He will not touch you again, he said. Rose looked at him. Not while I'm breathing, he said. That's not a promise I'm making lightly. She looked at him for a long time in the dark, the kind of looking that was really deciding, the kind that had nothing to do with hope and everything to do with evidence. And for the first time since he'd cut her out of that sack on the South Road, Rose Carter believed someone completely. They didn't sleep. There was no pretending to, no point in it. Ethan sat on the porch with his rifle, and Rose sat beside him with the pistol. And the August dark pressed down on the ranch like something with weight and intention. The cicadas had gone quiet around midnight, which meant something had moved through the field past the fence line. Animal or man, he couldn't say yet. Tell me about Delia, he said. Not because it was useful, because Rose needed somewhere to put the waiting, and talking was better than silence when silence had teeth. She looked at the dark yard. Small, serious, the kind of child who asked questions adults didn't know how to answer. A pause. She used to save her biscuit from supper and leave it outside her window for the stray cats. Every night, even when she was hungry. Rose's voice stayed even. I told her not to waste food. She told me the cats were hungrier. A beat. She was right. I wasn't. She sounds like Lily, Ethan said. She sounds exactly like Lily. Rose looked at him. That's why it... She stopped, started again. When Lily touched my face that first morning and said I had her mother's eyes, I nearly came apart entirely. Because the last child who looked at me like that was Delia. She pressed her lips together. I left her there. I had to, but I left her. You left to get the ledger out, he said. I know. That's the only reason Delia has a chance of being found. I know that too. Her voice didn't ask for comfort. It was just honest.
This story
Knowing
was
the
posted
right
on the
reason
channel
doesn't
West
always
of
fix
Betrayal.
the feeling.
Please do not repost
didn't
it
argue
in
with
any
that.
form.
It was true, and she deserved to have true things acknowledged. When Aldridge acts on Hayes' testimony, Ethan said, the first thing a federal investigation opens is the placement records. Every child, every location, every family. They'll find her. Rose turned the pistol slowly in her hands. And if the family she went to... Then that family answers for it, he said. And so does Hale. Every outcome traces back to him. That's what the ledger does. It traces every single thing back to him. She was quiet for a moment. You're very certain for a man who's never done this before. Never done what? Taken on a federal marshal with 6 men and a network of judges? Her voice had a dry edge to it. Not bitterness, something closer to dark humor. The kind that developed in people who'd been through enough that laughing was sometimes the only structurally sound response. No, he said. First time. How does it feel? He thought about it honestly. Like I've been functional for 3 years, instead of alive, he said. And I'd rather be alive, even scared. She looked at him for a moment. Then she looked back at the yard. Ethan, she said. Yeah? Whatever happens in the morning, whether Aldrich acts, whether the story prints, whether Hale comes back with twice the men. She paused. Thank you for stopping the wagon. He didn't say anything for a moment. Lily stopped the wagon, he said. I just didn't argue with her. You could have. Not with Lily, he said. Nobody argues with Lily and wins. And in the dark, in the middle of everything, Rose laughed. A real laugh, short and low and entirely unguarded, gone almost before it arrived, but completely real. And he sat there next to her and listened to it fade, and thought that it was possibly the best sound he'd heard in 3 years. Then his horse called out from the barn, sharp, once. Both of them were on their feet. It wasn't Hale. It was a rider Ethan didn't recognize, young, riding hard, coming straight up the main road without any attempt at quiet, which meant either he was reckless or he wasn't trying to hide what he was doing. He came through the open gate and pulled up hard 15 feet from the porch, and Ethan had the rifle up and leveled before the horse finished stopping. Easy, the rider said, both hands coming up immediately. I'm not armed. My name's Will Thorne, Elsa Thorne's nephew. She sent me. Ethan kept the rifle up. From Redstone Creek. From Caldera Flats, the boy said. He was maybe 19, out of breath, and had the look of someone who'd been riding flat out for the better part of an hour. Aunt Elsa rode in this evening. Met with a woman from the general store, Mrs. Doyle. She's been talking to your deputy Caldwell, too. All 3 of them are at the hotel in town. He looked from Ethan to Rose and back. Caldwell signed a sworn statement an hour ago. Everything about tonight. What you said about the ledger. Why he walked away. Everything. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded envelope. Aunt Elsa wanted you to have this. Ethan came down the steps and took it without lowering the rifle. He handed it to Rose. She unfolded it, read it in the dark, holding it toward the porch lamp. Her face changed as she read. Not dramatically, just incrementally. The way a face changed when one impossible thing after another turned out to be real. She already wrote the story, Rose said. Her voice had gone quiet. It's ready to print. She's been holding it for 2 years, waiting for documentation she could stand behind. She looked up. She's sending it on the morning stage to the Millhaven Courier and a wire to the St. Louis paper. Both papers, Ethan said. Both papers, Rose said. By noon tomorrow, it's not a county story. It's not even a state story. Will Thorne dropped his hands slowly, satisfied that nobody was going to shoot him. Mrs. Doyle also said to tell you, Margaret's words exactly, tell that stubborn rancher that Hale left Caldera Flats 2 hours ago going north, and nobody knows where, and that is not a good sign, so keep his eyes open. The relief that had been building in Rose's face reset immediately. Ethan put the rifle back to full attention. North, he said. North, Will confirmed. North wasn't Millhaven. North was the Creek Trail, the same route he'd sent Hayes on. Rose saw it on his face before he said it. Hayes, she said. Boy, Ethan said to Will Thorne. How fast is that horse? He didn't take Rose, and she didn't fight him on it. She looked him dead in the eye and said, If you're not back in 2 hours, I'm coming after you. And he said, Fair enough. And he was on his horse and through the gate in under 3 minutes. He rode the creek trail at the best pace the dark allowed, which was faster than was comfortable and slower than he wanted. The trail ran north along the dry creek bed, wound through 2 miles of scrub and flat rock, and came out on the main north road about 8 miles out of Caldera Flats. Hayes and Margaret's cousin had a 2-hour head start. Hale had a 2-hour head start the other direction. The math was close. Too close. He heard them before he saw anything. Voices, not shouting, which was worse. Quiet, controlled voices, which meant a situation already contained. He came off the trail onto the north road and pushed the horse hard for the last quarter mile, and when he came around the bend, he found them. Hayes's wagon stopped in the road, 2 horses alongside it. Hale, alone. He'd left his men behind, come north himself, which meant he was past strategy and into desperation. Standing at the side of the wagon, with one hand on Hayes's arm and the other on a pistol he hadn't drawn yet. Margaret's cousin, a thick, quiet man named Robert, was on the wagon bench with his hands very still in his lap, watching Hale the way you watched a cornered animal. Ethan pulled up hard, and his horse skidded to a stop 20 feet away. Hale turned. In the lamplight from the wagon, his face was different from anything Ethan had seen from him before. The warmth was gone entirely. What was left was stripped bare. A man who had built his whole life on a particular kind of control and could feel it coming apart, and who had ridden out here alone because there was nobody left he trusted to do what needed doing. "Cole," Hale said. "Let go of him," Ethan said. "The document he's carrying is already copied," Ethan said. "Elsa Thorne has a copy. Margaret Doyle has a copy. Caldwell signed a sworn statement an hour ago." He looked at Hale steadily. "There is no version of tonight where you ride back to Caldera Flats and any of this goes away. The only question left is how many laws you break between now and when Aldrich's people come for you." Hale's hand released Hayes's arm. Hayes pulled away and straightened his coat, and his face had the look of a man who had been frightened and was converting it, fast and efficiently, into anger. "He threatened to burn the document," Hayes said. "I know," Ethan said. "I told him there were copies." "I know." "He didn't believe me." "He believes you now," Ethan said. He looked at Hale. "It's over, Victor." Hale looked at him across the 20 feet of dark road between them, and Ethan saw the calculation happen in real time. Exit routes, remaining options, what was salvageable, what was not. He'd seen it in men before, usually men who'd been used to winning. "I built that orphanage," Hale said. "It came out unexpectedly. Not defensive, not explanatory, just raw. The words of a man who'd told himself a story for so long he'd partially believed it. The county had nothing for those children, nothing. I gave them food, shelter, education. You gave them a price tag," Ethan said. The words landed like a flat stone. Hale went quiet.
This story
looked
was
at children
posted
with
on the
nothing,
channel west
Ethan
of
said.
Betrayal.
And you
Please
saw
do
an
not
opportunity.
repost it in any form.
That's what you did. Everything else you told yourself so you could sleep. He kept his voice even. You knew exactly what you were doing. That's why you kept records. Men who believe they're doing right don't need to track the money so carefully. Hale stared at him. Then his hand moved toward the pistol. Ethan's rifle was up before the hand completed the motion. Robert, on the wagon bench, had a shotgun from somewhere that Ethan hadn't seen him reach for. Hayes had thrown himself sideways off the wagon seat. Hale's hand stopped. He stood in the road with 3 weapons on him, and the night pressing in from every direction. And he was very still. And Ethan watched the last calculation finish running and come up empty. Hale lowered his hand. "Unbuckle it," Ethan said. "The whole belt. Let it drop." A long moment. Then Hale reached down slowly and unbuckled the gun belt and let it fall into the road dust. "Hayes," Ethan said. "You all right?" "Fine." Hayes climbed back onto the wagon bench with the dignity of a man who had made his peace with indignity. Considerably better than 5 minutes ago. "Get to Millhaven," Ethan said. "Don't stop." "Wasn't planning to." Hayes looked at Hale one time. A doctor's look. Full inventory. No warmth. "You're going to want to remember this moment," Hayes said to him. "Because it's the last one you'll have where you get to choose how you carry yourself." He clicked his tongue at the horse, and the wagon moved. Robert followed without a word, the shotgun resting across his knees until they were far enough down the road that it disappeared into the dark. Ethan and Hale were alone in the road. Hale looked at his gun belt in the dust. "You going to take me in?" "I'm going to ride behind you back to Caldera Flats," Ethan said. "And you're going to walk into the county sheriff's office and surrender yourself. Sheriff Briggs answers to the county, not to you, and he's been waiting a long time to have a reason to put you somewhere." He looked at him. "You do that, and I don't tell anyone you drew on a wagon of unarmed men in the dark. What you do between here and the sheriff's office is the last piece of yourself you've got left to manage." Hale stood in the road for a long moment. Then he bent down and picked up the gun belt, Ethan's rifle tracking every inch of that motion. And he slung it over his saddle instead of buckling it back on. And he rode south toward Caldera Flats. And Ethan rode 10 feet behind him the whole way. And neither of them said a single word. Sheriff Briggs was awake when they rode in. He was always awake when things were wrong. It was his particular gift and his particular curse, that instinct. And he was standing on the jailhouse steps with a lamp when they came down the main street. And he looked at the two of them, and at Hale's gun belt on the saddle, and he said nothing at all, just held the door open. Hale walked in. Briggs looked at Ethan. "I'm going to need a full account in the morning." "You'll have it," Ethan said. "And Caldwell's written statement is at the hotel. Margaret Doyle and Elsa Thorne can corroborate everything." Briggs looked at him for a long moment. He was a careful man, Briggs. Not slow, just careful, in the way of someone who'd learned that things done right the first time rarely needed doing again. "That girl out at your place," he said. "Rose Carter." "Yes." "She safe?" "For now." "I'll send 2 men out at first light. Keep the property secured until Federal comes." He paused. "Hale have other men, beyond the ones that walked away tonight?" "2 or 3 he'll have kept close. They'll run when they hear he's in custody." Briggs nodded. "All right." He looked at the jailhouse door. 11 years, he said very quietly. Not to Ethan, just to the night. 11 years I watched that man walk around this county like he was built out of something better than the rest of us. His jaw worked. I never had enough to act. Never quite enough. His eyes came back to Ethan. "Tonight, I've got enough." "Tonight, you've got more than enough," Ethan said. He rode home. Rose was on the porch when he came through the gate, standing, the pistol still in her hand. She watched him come across the yard, and she read his face before he said a word. And something in her posture changed. Not collapse, not relief. Something more fundamental than either. Like a structure that had been built entirely to withstand pressure, slowly recognizing that the pressure had stopped. "Hayes?" she said. "On the road to Millhaven." He swung down from the horse. "Hale's in county custody. Briggs took him himself." Rose put her free hand against the porch post. Just her fingers against the wood, steadying something. "Caldwell's statement," she said. "The story." "Goes out on the morning stage." He tied the horse to the rail. "Both papers. By noon it's done." She looked at him from the porch, and the August dark was starting, just barely at the edges, To go that particular blue-gray that meant the night had turned the corner toward morning without anyone noticing. "He's really in custody," she said, "sitting in Briggs's jailhouse right now." She looked at her hand against the post. She looked at it for a long time. "I've been running for 6 weeks," she said. "After the sack, there was nowhere. Every town I came through, I kept moving because staying felt like dying." Her voice had gone quiet. "I was on that road because I'd stopped believing there was anywhere left to go." She looked at him. "I wasn't walking toward something. I was just still moving because stopping felt like giving up." "And then Lily stopped the wagon," he said. "And then Lily stopped the wagon," she said. The rooster in the yard started up. The sky had gone from black to dark blue to the color of iron. "There's going to be a process," Ethan said. "Federal investigation. Probably a long one. You'll have to give testimony, multiple times. It won't be comfortable." "I know." "And there'll be people who push back." Hale has friends in comfortable places, and those friends don't disappear overnight. "I know that too." She looked at him directly. "I've been carrying those 46 names for 6 weeks. I'll carry them through a courtroom if that's what it takes." A beat. "All the way to the end." He nodded. "Margaret will help navigate the legal side. She's got more fight in her than most men I know." "I noticed." "Hayes will testify. Caldwell and his men. Elsa Thorne's story will put pressure on the federal office to move faster than they'd like." "You thought all of this through," Rose said. "I had all night," he said. She almost smiled, then actually smiled. The real version, the one she'd been holding back since the kitchen on the first morning. It was quieter than he'd expected, and warmer, and it changed her face in a way that had nothing to do with being young, and everything to do with being, for the first time in a very long time, unafraid. "Ethan," she said. "Yeah, what happens now? After the testimony? After the investigation? After—" She gestured at the invisible weight of all of it. He looked at her. "That's up to you." "Is it?" "You're a free person," he said. "You go where you want. Do what you choose." He paused. "But if you're asking me what I'd prefer—" He stopped. Started again. "I've got a ranch that needs a second pair of hands. I've got a daughter who will absolutely never stop talking to you for the rest of your natural life. And I've got a porch that seats 2. He looked at the horizon, where the iron gray was going pale gold. "Clara used to say a place isn't a home until it's chosen. Not inherited, not assigned. Chosen." He looked back at Rose. "You can choose where you go from here. I'm just saying one of your options is staying." Rose looked at the yard, the barn, the pale sky above the fence line. She looked at the porch and its peeling paint on the left side. She looked at Ethan Cole, who had stopped a wagon on a dirt road because his daughter told him to.
This story was posted
and had
on the
spent 2
channel
days
west
building
of
a wall
Betrayal.
between a marked
Please do
girl
not repost
and the
it
man
in any
who
form.
believed he owned her, and had ridden out in the dark, not because it was safe or smart, but because it was necessary. "You said Clara chose this place," Rose said. "She did. Tell me about her." He was quiet for a moment, not a difficult quiet, a considering one. "She was certain, the way Lily is certain," he said. "Saw straight to the center of things. Didn't like wasted words or wasted time." He paused. "She would have liked you. She had no patience for people who accepted things they should have fought." Rose was quiet for a moment. "Lily said I have her eyes," she said. "You do," he said. "The color of them. The way they go still when they've decided something." She looked at him. "I'd like to meet Delia," she said. "When they find her. I'd like to be somewhere she can come to." "Then be somewhere," he said. "Here." "Here," he agreed. The gold on the horizon was spreading, and the rooster was fully committed to his opinion about the morning. And somewhere in the direction of Margaret Doyle's place, a wagon was already moving. Lily, he suspected, who had been awake since dawn and had convinced Margaret of the urgency of returning home approximately 40 minutes before Margaret had intended. He heard the wagon before he could see it. Rose heard it too and turned toward the sound, and then Lily came through the gate at a speed that suggested she had taken the reins from Margaret at some point along the road, standing up on the bench with her yellow hair loose and her voice already going. "Papa! Rose!" I heard the rooster. "Is it over? Did Hayes make it? Where's Hale?" Margaret said Briggs took him, but she said it like she wasn't completely sure, and I couldn't sleep anyway. She hit the ground off the wagon before it stopped moving and came across the yard at a full run, and Rose came down the porch steps and crouched and caught her, and Lily wrapped both arms around Rose's neck and held on with the total, uncomplicated certainty of a child who had decided 3 days ago that this was simply the way things were. "It's over," Rose said into Lily's hair. "It's done." Lily pulled back and looked at her face with those amber eyes she shared with her mother, and apparently now with someone else. "You're staying," Lily said, not a question. "I'm staying," Rose said. Lily nodded with the satisfaction of someone whose assessment of the situation had been correct from the beginning. "I knew you would," she said. "I told Papa you would." He said he didn't know. And I said, "Yes, you do, Papa. You just don't know you know yet." "And what did I say to that?" Ethan said. "You said, 'Lily,' in that voice," she said, "which means you know I'm right, and you don't want to talk about it." She slid out of Rose's arms and took her hand instead, holding it matter-of-factly, and looked at her father. "Can we have breakfast? Margaret's biscuits are good, but she burns the eggs even worse than you do, Papa, and I had to eat them anyway." "I do not burn the eggs," Ethan said. "Every single time," Lily and Rose said at the same moment. And Margaret Doyle, pulling the wagon up to the fence with the expression of a woman who had seen enough of the world's ugliness and was actively choosing this instead, heard that, and the sound of her laughing carried all the way across the yard. 43 days later, a federal judge in Millhaven issued warrants for the arrest of 6 men connected to Holloway House operations, including Gerald Webb. The Millhaven Courier and the St. Louis Register both ran Elsa Thorne's story on the same day, and within a week, 3 more publications had picked it up. Letters began arriving at the county sheriff's office, from families, from former residents of Holloway House, from people who had known and said nothing and were now saying something. Delia was found 11 days after the story ran. She was with a family in a town 60 miles east, and the family, in the particular way of people who had not known the full truth of where a child had come from and did not want to know what happened to them next, surrendered her without argument to the county welfare officer who came to the door. Rose drove out to collect her. She brought Lily. The drive back took most of the day, and by the time they came through the gate of the Cole Ranch, the sun was going sideways, and Ethan was on the porch, and Delia was a small, serious girl with watchful eyes, who looked at the ranch, and the fence line, and the barn, and the porch with its peeling paint on the left side, and said nothing at all for a long time. Then she looked at Lily. "Is there a cat?" she said. "2, Lily said, "and 6 chickens, and a rooster who argues with the morning, and a creek that goes dry every August, except for one deep pool where the catfish go." She held out her hand. "Come on, I'll show you." Delia looked at her hand. Then she took it. Victor Hale was convicted on 14 federal counts and sentenced to 22 years. The Holloway House closed permanently. Of the 46 names in the ledger, 41 children were located and accounted for. 5 remained the subject of an ongoing federal investigation, names that would never leave Rose Carter's memory, that she carried forward, not as guilt, but as obligation. the kind that does not release you, but that you learn, over time, to carry like a lantern instead of a stone. She stayed. She chose it the way Clara had chosen the ranch, not because it was easy or certain or without cost, but because it was real, and it was hers, and the people in it were worth every hard thing the choosing required. On an evening in September, when the heat had finally broken and the sky was the particular clear blue of a country that had been washed clean, Ethan fixed the peeling paint on the left side of the porch. Rose handed him the brush without being asked. Lily sat on the steps and told them both, in comprehensive detail, everything wrong with the technique they were using. And the ranch was full of noise and argument and the smell of supper from the kitchen, where Delia was learning to make biscuits from a recipe that had been Clara's. And all of it, every ordinary, stubborn, loud, alive piece of it, was exactly what it was supposed to be. A home that had been chosen. And that made it unbreakable.